Good afternoon. I'm Melody R. Di Maano from Lyceum of the Philippines University, Batangas. I am here to present to you my study entitled Students' Experience on Blended Learning Approaches. Sometimes, teaching and learning methods have a direct impact on students' learning experiences. Blended learning is a combination of face-to-face and online delivery method which influences students' perception on the learning environment to a great extent. Blended learning has a proven also track record of bringing traditional classrooms into the tech-friendly 21st century. So, the growth in the use of blended learning has created cultural shifts in higher education, and it's important to understand student experience in this mode. So, the problem that we have with the current system is that we are still using strategies and structures that go back 100 years. The classroom where students are sitting, sometimes very possibly. The 21st century learner, if anything, is very averse to that. As such, the study aims to identify the most utilized methodology of blended learning and the experiences of students with them. Specifically, it aims to determine to what extent do the blended learning approaches are being utilized in the College of Computer Studies. How are the learning experiences of the students be described in terms of interaction, perception, participation, barriers, and preferences. Technological advances change the way we live our day-to-day lives. This impact not only with our personal routine but all aspects of industry, making process easier and effective. Similarly, the academic community made strides in adopting this technological advancement, and the resulting phenomena leads to change in the way we deliver our lecture. Blended learning, to be specific, is a method of teaching that integrates technological and digital media with traditional instructor-led classroom activities, giving students more flexibility to customize their learning experiences. According to Panopto, he mentioned that one must keep in mind that blended learning is not simply mixing technology and teaching. It also includes a mix of both face-to-face, instructor-led learning, and online or digital course component that gives students some control over path and pace. Also, he mentioned that in blended learning, the in-person and online elements work together to create a richer learning experience. However, he mentioned that despite being incorporated into this contemporary approach of teaching, there seems to be a gap between the resulting experiences of students as recipient of this new learning methodology. As such, this study aims to identify the most utilized methodology of blended learning and the experiences of students with them. So I have 4 objectives of the study. First, to determine the extent the blended learning approaches are being utilized in the College of Computer Studies. Second, how are the learning experiences of the students be described in terms of perception, in terms of interaction, participation, barriers, and preferences. My third objective is to test the significant relationship between the blended learning approaches and the learning experiences of the student. And the last one is to propose a plan of action that can be suggested to enhance the learning experiences of the students. The study utilized a descriptive approach as it tries to examine and understand a current phenomenon. As such, it is used to describe systematically and accurately the facts and characteristics of a given population or area of interest, which in this case are blended learning approaches. So the respondents of the study conducted in Lyceum of the Philippines University, specifically College of Computer Studies, with 58 first-year BSIT and BSCS students, 16 third-year BSIT and BSCS students, and 3 ACT during the academic year of 2018 and 2019. So the research instrument was adapted from an existing validated survey questionnaire known as the Blended Learning Toolkit, which was created by the University of Central Florida and the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, with funding from the NGLC. So to facilitate the data gathering, the questionnaire was posted on a website and was available to students using Microsoft Form. This enabled the student regardless of their location so that they could access the questionnaire to be answered. So once done, all the responses were immediately tabulated, and these are available to the researcher on real time. And also to prevent factors such as distance or location in hindering the data gathering, the respondents were also informed that all the responses are kept confidential. So for the researcher to analyze all the data or to interpret the data effectively, the researcher employed the following statistical treatment. I used the percentage to determine the part or the portion in relation to its whole. And I used also the Pearson's correlation that was used to test the relationship between the blended learning approaches and the learning experiences. Also, the Pearson correlation also measures the association between the variables of interest that is based on the method of covariance. Also, as a researcher, I used the weighted mean to determine the average frequency of the responses to the questionnaire to represent the whole of the respondents. And also as a researcher, I used the Likert scale that also used by the following verbal interpretation. Table 2, extent of utilization of blended learning approach. So the table depicts the extent or how much of the identified blended learning approach are being utilized in LPU Batangas. So garnering the highest composite mean, lab rotation is reflected as the most utilized blended learning approach, wherein classes are done in several computer laboratories. So students are assigned to 2 or more computer laboratories on a given schedule, and learning application are done in computer laboratories without classroom usage. So the teachers are able to maximize the classroom with the use of technology. So they deliver a mini lesson and thus a formal check for understanding. So the students who demonstrate proficiency are ready to rotate to the computer lab rotation or lab to complete the independent practice. This is followed by flex blended learning, which a composite mean of 3.91, followed by enriched virtual blended learning with a composite mean of 3.87, followed by the flipped classroom blended learning, which is a composite mean of 3.39. And of course, lastly, we have the a la carte blended learning with a composite mean of 2.87, which enables the students to take an online course with an online teacher of record. For Table 3, learning experiences of the student in terms of interaction. So in terms of interaction, the Table 3 discusses the specific learning experience of the students. Generally, it is classified as much better, but specifically, it was quality of interaction with other students that benefited the most in blended learning. So this was reflected with a weighted mean of 4.63, ranking the first among this aspect. So given the result, it was but naturally closely followed by the amount of interaction with other students and the amount of interaction with the instructor. For the table 4, for learning experiences of students in terms of perception, it illustrates the learning experiences of students in terms of perception, seemingly that my blended learning course experience was increased. The opportunity to access and use information that ranked first with a weighted mean of 4.61. So this was interpreted as strongly agree among the respondents. And then for table 5, learning experiences of the students in terms of participation. The table summarizes the learning experience of the students described in terms of participation. That students are more motivated to succeed, garnering a weighted mean of 4.73 with a verbal interpretation of strongly agreed, followed by another indicator with a similar verbal interpretation that my personal devices help with my learning with a weighted mean of 4.65. Then followed by with all indicators garnering a composite mean of 4.40 or interpreted as agree. So this only means that respondents agree that participation do contribute to their learning experiences in blended learning. And then table 6, learning experiences of students in terms of barriers. It depicts the barriers faced by students, specifically having to withdraw from a blended learning course. So a large portion of about 86% have not withdrawn or have not experienced this barrier. And then table 7, learning experiences of students described in terms of preferences. So in terms of experiences of students in terms of preference, in terms of satisfaction, the students are satisfied with resulted from a weighted mean of 4.13. That majority, on the other hand, are more engaged in blended learning course as reflected with 85% of the respondents saying yes, they are. And then table 8, relationship between blended learning approaches and the learning experience of students. Based from the result, the interests of the student revolve around the use of technology for learning. So the researcher highly recommends giving emphasis on how the contents of the lectures are delivered in the classroom. So based from the result of the studies, since the interests of the student revolve around the use of technology for learning, the researcher highly recommends giving emphasis on how the contents of the lectures are delivered in the classroom. So the researcher believes that in order for the students to manifest the same interest in the classroom as it is in the computer laboratories, the manner of delivery should be given more significant rather than in focusing on the content alone. So holistic interest in the learning through improved classroom teaching, that is our goal. And for the output, we have the faculty development training. So these are the activities. So number 1, we have benchmarking to discover and explore creative and effective manner of delivering lecture. Number 2, immersion for the to local or international HEI. Number 3, customized learning methodology according to the needs or level of acceptance of students. And lastly, to conduct more training of faculty members on other blended learning approaches using educational technology. And for the conclusion, as per students' response, the lab rotation is the most utilized blended approach, citing much better interaction with other students, perceived to increase opportunity to access the use of informations that are motivated to succeed from not having to withdraw from a blended learning course. They are satisfied and more engaged with blended learning. So the lab rotation model can be set up the way learners spend one day. They work in a class with a teacher to reinforce what they learn in the lab and can cover tricky questions. And for the recommendations, since there is an already established interest in the use of technology for learning, the researcher recommends giving the way to classroom teaching as well as to create a holistic interest in learning. That's all. Thank you.